welcome back to the channel. Today, we are doing a full deep dive into Lecture 2 of Akashic Records of Bastard Magic Instructor. Last time, our new substitute teacher, Glenn Radars, challenged his ace student, Sistine Fibel, to a magical duel to settle their differences. So today, we're going to see it all. The duel, the fallout, and a lecture that will change everything for this classroom. Will Sistine's by-the-book knowledge triumph, or does this lazy professor have some kind of trick up his sleeve? Let's find out. We start with a touching flashback, showing us why this duel means so much to Sistine. We see her as a child at her grandfather's bedside, who tells her his dream was to solve the mysteries of Melgalius' sky castle, a dream he could never achieve. With tears streaming down her face, young Sistine promises she will do it for him. This is her driving motivation. Back in the present, she sets the terms for the duel with Glenn. It'll be shock bolt only, and if he wins, she has to stop telling him off. A simple wager. The stage is set. Students watch from a distance as Glenn and Sistine face off. With a cool, almost lazy smirk, Glenn begins, "Shall we get started then?" As they prepare, the other students start breaking down the rules. They explain that Shock Bolt is a basic spell, but the key to victory is shortening the 3-verse incantation to a single phrase. Jabul, the class brainiac, questions why the professor would agree to a rule that favors Sistine, a master of speedcasting. And that's when Rumia has a sudden realization. Glenn is so confident in his own speed that he thinks he can completely outclass her. He's basically telling her, "Come at me, bro." Back on the field, Glenn's confidence is off the charts. He's totally calm, taunting her by asking, "What's the matter? Ready when you are." Sistine is visibly unnerved. This guy's energy is just weird. Glenn decides to push her buttons one last time, calling her a weakling. That does it. Sistine unleashes her full power, instantly casting the 1-verse version of the spell. A massive bolt of lightning slams directly into Glenn. We see him get absolutely deleted, letting out a huge "Jah!" It's a perfect, clean hit. Fatality! But wait, what's this? As the smoke clears, he starts to push himself up from the ground, laughing menacingly. He says, "Not bad. I'll let you have the first round in this 3-round fight." Sistine is floored, shouting, "What? Who said this was 3 rounds?" The classic, "It was all a part of my master plan" defense. A truly galaxy brain move from our professor, who immediately starts chanting the super slow, full 3-verse incantation. Sistine isn't buying this nonsense for a second. She just repeatedly spams the spell, zapping him again and again and again. After taking several more direct hits, Glenn collapses into a smoldering heap. And that's when the horrible, embarrassing truth dawns on Sistine as she asks, "Professor, don't you tell me, are you unable to cast the 1-verse version of Shock Bolt?" The truth comes out in the most pathetic way possible. Glenn leaps up, totally flustered. What? Of course I can! But shortening the incantation is blasphemy against the spell, you know? My man is trying to claim it's disrespectful to the spell's lore or something. When Sistine presses him, he clutches his head and pretends the shocks gave him amnesia. Bro thinks he's the main character in a soap opera. Then he makes a run for it, shouting nonsense as he flees. The other students are baffled, while Sistine is left fuming, muttering, "That jerk!" So after that legendary failure of a duel, we see that Glenn's antics are causing problems for his sponsor, Celica Arphonia. But Glenn couldn't care less. The next day in class, he's back to his old tricks, literally sleeping through his own lecture. When a quiet student named Rin tries to ask a question, Sistine stops her, saying it's a waste of time. Sistine declares that the professor has zero appreciation for how noble and great magic is. Unfortunately for her, Glenn was faking it. He sits up, his expression suddenly sharp, and asks, "Pray tell, what exactly is so noble and great about magic?" Sistine gives her the classic idealistic answer about pursuing truth and attaining the power of God. Glenn is unimpressed, and asks what magic is actually useful for compared to things like medicine or agriculture. Then, a disturbing smirk spreads across his face as he says, "There is one area where magic is incredibly useful." With a chilling expression that wipes the smiles off everyone's faces, he gives his answer: killing people. Well, that escalated quickly. We went from 0 to 100 real fast.
Glenn continues his terrifying lecture, explaining that magic's development went hand in hand with the art of murder. He calls it a worthless field that they are wasting their lives on. Unable to listen to his insults any longer, Sistine cuts him off with the sharp sound of a slap. Out of nowhere, Sistine slaps Glenn across the face. Tears streaming down her cheeks, it is Sistine who yells, "I hate you!" before turning and running out of the classroom, leaving everyone in shock.
Later, we see a very different Glenn on a school balcony. He looks exhausted, admitting to himself he's not cut out for this. He pulls out a letter of resignation, ready to pull the "I'm a head out" on his entire teaching career. But that night, he finds Rin in a lab practicing magic. In a surprising twist, his response is gentle. He sees she's struggling and offers to help her. Maybe there's more to this guy. With his guidance, Rin's magic circle glows to life. She's ecstatic and correctly guesses that deep down, he must actually like magic. He denies it, of course, but the seed is planted. Later, a conversation with another student, Rumia, takes a much more serious turn. She tells him a traumatic story from her past where a kind-hearted mage was forced to kill her kidnappers to save her, and the agony on his face has haunted her ever since. Her dream is to become a high-ranking officer to guide mages down a better path, so no one has to suffer like he did. Rumia's incredible resolve clearly has a profound effect on Glenn. He looks at his resignation letter and decides he needs to rethink things. The next morning, the students are in for a shock. Glenn arrives early, looking serious. He stands before them, bows deeply, and gives a formal apology for his harsh words the day before. The entire class is stunned into silence. But does this moment of maturity earn him respect? Of course not. This is a classroom of teenagers. They immediately start mocking him, reminding him that he can't even cast a one-verse shock bolt, proving, once again, that no good deed goes unpunished. Fed up, Glenn decides it's time for a real lecture. He admits he's fatally low in skill, but declares he's going to teach them about shock bolt. The students snicker, but Glenn starts to chant. He turns to the chalkboard and proposes a revolutionary idea. What if instead of shortening the chant, you lengthened it with a pause? He asks the class brainiac, Jabul, who confidently says the spell will obviously fail. But Rin argues back, saying it would be random. Glenn just laughs at them. Snort. Random. Do you seriously believe that? I thought you guys had mastered this spell. He raises his hand, explaining the answer is it will veer to the right. He casts the spell, and to the absolute shock of the entire class, the bolt of lightning curves sharply through the air, exactly as he had predicted. He continues, showing them how to modify the spell's range and power by altering the chant in other ways, proving he has a deep understanding of magic even if he lacks raw power. Now that he has their full attention, he explains the true nature of magic. It's a high level of autosuggestion that probes the human heart. To prove words have power, he flusters a male student by laying down some cheesy romance lines, which is hilarious. He then attempts to cast a spell with a single original keyword, commanding stun. A weak pulse of energy appears, but the fact that he did it at all is a god-tier move that leaves the students speechless. He ties it all together, explaining that spell alteration is just an association game, and that their textbooks, which force them to memorize by rote, have skipped over these absolute basics. He holds up their textbook, looks them all dead in the eye, and delivers his final brutal verdict on their skills. You guys are practically brain dead. Whew, emotional damage. The lecture is over. He tells them they are nothing more than magic users, and that from now on, he will teach them the most basic of basics. It's time for Magic 101, taught by a professor who finally decided to turn on his brain. Of course, we end with a hilarious bonus panel where, as Sistine and Rumia are walking away, Sistine remarks, "Still, after all that's said and done, you still can't perform one-verse incantations." Glenn overhears this and is comically crushed, remembering his own spectacular failure in the duel. Some things never change. And that officially closes the book on Lecture 2. What a journey! We've seen Glenn go from a lazy, incompetent fool to a cynical critic and finally a brilliant, unorthodox teacher who is ready to rebuild their students' understanding of magic from the ground up. Thank you so much for following along with this entire chapter recap. I had a blast making it. If you enjoyed this series, please make sure you are subscribed, smash that like button, and let me know in the comments what you thought of Professor Glenn's first real lesson. Until next time, take care and stay awesome.